Welcome back to the Bernard Lee Poker Show. As I mentioned previously, the WSOP is starting 2022 version. This gentleman won a bracelet, his third last year in the 2021 WSOP, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're talking about last week with his success at the WPT, specifically as they all came back together because a couple of final tables came back and they played in Las Vegas to play in the HyperX eSports arena at the Luxor. This gentleman came back second in chips, but in essence, really about the same as the chip leader from the WPT Choctaw main event. And he ended up winning almost $500,000 over a total field of 787 players. But why I said this was a great week was also during the week, there was another final table being played from the Seminole Hard Rock, where Darren Elias was going for his record fifth WPT main event. He already has a record of 4.
But Mark stopped him.
But this gentleman stopped him. And he was training with Chance Kornuth during the event and prior to the event. And now Mark is a WPT champion. Welcome back to the show, Chance Kornuth. Chance, thanks for joining us here on the Bernard Lee Poker Show, my friend.
My pleasure.
A long introduction, but obviously a phenomenal week for you. Incredible, it must seem like, going back to back and watching your student win and then obviously you following it up yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it was just an incredible experience. You know, I think we are looking at the numbers, and even if we were very generous with our own skills, like the odds of us both winning had to be, 10% or less. So it was a pretty incredible week, ran well, and we both came away with the victory.
How was it, they always talk about it, right? Like, I hear it a lot because I used to play tennis, but like watching is so much more stressful than playing. And, when you're watching your student play, who you've been gearing up for this moment, and obviously there's a lot of hype about Darren extending his WPT lead because he had such a massive chip lead. What was it like kind of watching Mark go through this process?
I mean, he was super hungry, and so I was approached by a mutual friend, and then I gave Mark 3 options of coaching. And he chose the most expensive, all-in option. I unlocked all the products that we have for chip leader coaching and gave him homework in the products in the areas we wanted to work on. And he actually did all the homework and more, not to mention our daily phone calls that we went over in different scenarios that could happen. And I mean, he just no one wanted it more. There was never a doubt in Mark's mind that he was going to win, and he worked as hard as possible preparing for that moment, and he earned it.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it's great to see, unfortunately you could work that hard and not work out, obviously, but it's so great to see somebody really work hard. And then it obviously comes in and comes to fruition. Obviously with such a scenario of Darren trying to extend that record of 4 to 5 WPTs. And we've had on Darren just recently talking about him coming into this. One of the things that's so true is that Darren has nothing to lose, right? I mean, he really comes in and goes, I've already had him. I've got 4. And so that kind of plays with people's minds. Of course, he's thinking about winning it as well. But did Mark go into this if you're, kind of like the Ricky Bobby, if you're not first, you're last?
I mean, he wanted to win really badly, and definitely, that wasn't the most likely occurrence. It was obviously a little bit more likely that he got one of the other 5 places. And so I was definitely trying to prepare him for, if things don't go well right away, and say he loses the first flip he was in, and you're 15 million, here's how the dynamic is going to shift, and there will be a different plan going forward. And so, I was definitely super nervous watching him. He'd worked so hard, and it's I wonder the theory versus application issue. It's okay, we have a plan. It's a really fucking good plan. Is he going to be able to stick to it? And so I think whenever you're coaching someone in a big spot like that, it's I didn't have to tell Mark to be aggressive. And so that was actually something we had working for us. There were actually spots where I wanted him to play less hands. And so like, it's a lot easier to, kind of plug certain leaks if someone's a little too aggressive than it is to like get a nitty player to play aggressive outside of their comfort zone. So, it was kind of like the perfect storm. Like he was like the perfect possible student for me to teach how to win a final table. So it was a really fun experience for both of us. And then he came and watched mine the next day, and I got lucky enough to take it down as well. And it was like, we're just talking about how our names are going to be forever next to each other on this cup. And like, It really is like, I didn't expect to bond so much through the experience with him, but it was pretty surreal.
There's a really cool picture online. I'm sure you've seen it, where you're kind of like looking up to him as you're celebrating. It just seemed like such a great shot of really like the joy that you had for his win.
Absolutely.
Such a great picture. It really is.
There's been tournaments that I've won where I've won more money than I made coaching him. But I was way happier when he won than some of the other ones, for sure. Like it was just like a super proud moment, and just like awesome all around.
Talk a little bit before we go on and talk about your victory. Talk a little bit about chip leader coaching and how people could potentially get involved if they're interested in it.
So one of the avenues that we have is just like the Mark Davis type of thing, where if someone makes a delayed final table and they want to be prepared, or even just a final table in general, they can reach out to us, and we have some packages that are kind of custom based on the amount of time we have to put into it, or the amount of our time, I guess, the student would want, and then also how big the prize pool is. So it's kind of calculated like that. But then like our more standard coaching stuff is Alex Foxen and I have created our 2 flagship products, which are Chip Leader AI, which is a low-priced subscription-based service where it's literally an AI engine teaching you to play poker. Like I designed the brain where, if you excel at something, then the brain will give you more advanced concepts in that area. But if you struggle at something else, the AI engine will actually like keep you near like the root of the tree until you have unlocked that area and you get to go on to the more advanced concepts. So I think one of the biggest problems with learning today is it's not really targeted enough. People are like sifting through this solver stuff that really doesn't make a fucking difference. So I think that like that's kind of the biggest problem with all the coaching today is like it doesn't teach you how to think about the game. And then our other product, the closer, is just a pay once price point, and it's just like from start to finish, like every step of the tournament, like, pre-bubble, on the bubble, after you get in the money, depending on what stack size you have and who you are, like how to think about the game and how you can accumulate chips. And I think that it really is like the best stuff on the market for how to actually improve. And like Foxen and I are both ranked in the top 10 in the world for winning these things. And we're the only people anywhere near there that you can actually learn from.
Alex, although you guys are partners in this, didn't love you during your event as you knocked him out, and then followed it by knocking his wife out.
Oh yeah, I knocked out both Foxens. That's right. I knew going in I had the potential to probably be the first person to knock out both Foxens in one tournament, and I had forgotten that I did it.
You won't be getting the Christmas card this year, but but go to clcpoker.com if you want to get more information. Obviously, how often do you get a chance to talk with 2 of really some of the best poker players in the world, poker minds in the world? And obviously we are talking about in Chance alone, not only the recent WPT champion, but a 3-time WSOP bracelet winner as well. Let's talk about the WPT title now. Your first WPT title, Choctaw. What was it like having this break? Because WPTs often don't have that. They have had it in the recent years because of this HyperX eSports arena that they have at Luxor. What was that like for you going into that? Because you were, in essence, you were the chip leader. You were so close in chips. It was silly, right? The chip leader had 9.4, you had 9.025, and then James Hunt had exactly 9. So it's really kind of like these 3 chip leaders and then the others. But did you feel like, it's a bummer because you had the momentum going in, or were you happy with the break, or, what was it like? Because it's an unusual situation typically for WPT.
I always liked playing on a bigger stage, so I liked that we got to play in the HyperX Arena. When I made the Gardens WPT final table, we were scheduled to play there, and then with COVID and everything, we ended up playing in the Poker Go studio. So it's like I was really happy that we got to go do that. My delay was only a week long or so, maybe a little bit more, and so it wasn't really a big deal. And also, like, the players who are at my table, like, I don't think James Mackey was really going to study anything.
Right.
I know that James Hunt was probably going to do a little bit of ICM studying. But then, like, myself, Ray, Chrissy, and Cuz, like, we just weren't going to study. I could be wrong. There's probably some light stuff that everyone did. But I wouldn't be surprised if cumulatively the four of us did like almost nothing. So it wasn't really like a game changer like it is in some of these other ones. Like my Gardens WPT final table, I bet everyone did a lot of work, and it was an entirely different dynamic, and I was crushing when we got to that final table bubble. So like that one probably would have ended differently had we kept playing. This one, it just didn't really change the dynamic much, so fortunately there wasn't much shift there.
How was it to be in that arena? I've heard so many things. I've actually never seen it personally, but I've heard so many people who have played in it and they talk so highly about it.
Yeah, it was incredible. Like there's a reason WPTs are so popular, right? Like this experience from like a recreational perspective was just absolutely incredible. You fly to Vegas, your friends and family have a chance to come see. You get picked up by a car, taken to a suite nearby. The HyperX eSports Arena is really cool. Like the production, all of it, like it is a whole thing, and it makes it feel special. And I mean, I felt like it was special, and I played on, some of the biggest stages. And I can just imagine for like a recreational player getting there, like that's like the pinnacle for a lot of them, like that. I thought that was like way cooler than a lot of the WSOP final tables, and especially for spectators. Like the WSOP and Poker Go like don't care about spectators at all. It's actually like terrible to watch from our perspective. But like this was like pretty darn good for spectators. It was one of the best venues I'd seen for that. And so I think overall it was just a fantastic experience.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I love this. And like you said, you ended your day for WPT Choctaw in mid-May. So when you got back together just about a week and a half later, it really wasn't that long of a time. It wasn't a 3-4 month scenario like the WSOP used to be with the November 9. So you pretty much just kind of came back. Talk a little bit about the event itself. WPT Choctaw is a unusual place in the sense of it's just massive. A lot of people come to play, and also it really draws upon a bunch of areas, not only Oklahoma, but obviously Texas as well. How was it? Because I know you were one of the chip leaders after day one and kind of extended it through. How was the tournament leading up to that final table?
Yeah, I mean, like not a ton of pros went this particular, like it's always a good value stop. It's in Durant, Oklahoma, so that's obviously the downside. But it's always a high value stop. I wasn't actually planning on going, went last minute. And the fields were great. Like I think a lot of the professionals that would normally go decided to take a little bit of time off before the WSOP. And so I think that the ratio of recreational to professionals was better than I'd seen in a while. And, sometimes you get some good table draws and a good run of cards. And I mean, there's certain tables that you can like draw in like a tournament that is as good as one like that, where like you just get to accumulate chips so regularly, so frequently, because like no one's playing back, everyone's over folding. And so just like playing a lot of pots, you're just naturally going to build chips. And so, it's always nice to play an incredible field like that, where you just get like a lot of smooth navigations. And then I like won a coin flip against Foxen, and then I got some smooth navigations again. And like, it's just kind of a perfect storm.
Yeah. And that's really kind of where the chip leader coaching comes in, because like you just said, everyone talks about it that, oh, well, poker is being solved, or poker, so many people get training online or watch all the videos and all this kind of stuff that it's getting just so difficult to navigate. But when you go out and play these tournaments, and I just came back from playing WSOP circuit, it's still amazing to me. It's still just
Yeah.
baffling to me that
I mean, and people are just getting fucking worse with the solver stuff. Can you imagine, like, solvers are literally like two machines paired against each other to try to break even, or not be exploited, you know? And it's like, can you imagine playing that style against someone who raises 2x with the 7-8 suited and 4x with the aces? Like, I just don't understand why people are so hung up on like what game theory optimal is, or like, is the best hand I have to call. No, it isn't. The guy's not bluffing. You don't have to fucking call.
right.
Like, and it's just like, I feel like everyone's just getting like stupider and dependent on fucking these machines to make their decisions for them, instead of just like actually making an educated decision, like a well thought out thought process about the hand, whether you like believe something or you're making your decisions for a reason, is going to be better than a poorly implemented solver strategy every single time. And so like, you know, I would love people to just keep on, you know, doing the solvers and thinking like, yeah, that's cool. But like, if you're playing a 10K plus in Poker Go, yeah, by all means, like that's probably is what you need to be successful.
Right.
But if you're like playing a 500 to a 5K range of buy-ins, that is not how you win. And you know, that's one of the things that I've shown is, you know, I haven't done that much solver work. Like I know what the outputs are and I understand them and I know why they are the way they are. You know, it's important to know how your opponents think, but that is not how you win these things.
Right. Like you said, when you're playing in these super high rollers with the, you know, maybe 50 to 75 guys that all play together, et cetera, that solver scenario makes sense. But when you are playing in a tournament where and then, like you said, what I find is that very similar to that is they'll talk about it, but they don't fully understand what they're talking about.
No.
And then they try to implement it and then it just goes to hell in a handbasket. Right. Yeah. And so you're like, why did you do that? You're like, oh, when I looked at the chart, it told me I had to do it. I go, yeah, but you don't know what you're doing. Like you're doing this against, you know, as they said all along, you can't bluff somebody who doesn't know they're being bluffed. And so now you're trying to implement something where the other person across the table is like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, I don't understand what you're trying to do. And so I call and they're like, you're not supposed to call there. Like, well, they don't know what you're trying to do. So it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. And that's the other thing is like, yeah, the solvers have a lot of supposed to's kind of built in, right? But like, there's no supposed to, like, this guy's going to do something that he's not supposed to do, or like, you know, like that's just how poker works. So like, he's not supposed to call that, you know, you hear that a lot. And it's just
right.
You know, that's why we play.
Exactly. That's the beauty of this whole thing. And, you know, the more you pay attention, the more you follow all that. And like you said, you know, I'm very similar in that sense, is that I have looked at it. I've understood all of those GTOs and gotten it, but I don't follow it to the point of what they do, because the majority of the time that I play, I'll play either in the circuit or WPT or whatever, and run good or whatever it is. That's not going to be 95% of all the players who are.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to balance your range against a player you're never going to see again.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And then if you do see him again, he'll forget anyway. So it doesn't really matter.
I mean,
right?
I don't know. It's dumbfounding to me why people do what they do.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about this final table, and you said it, like the majority of the people here probably weren't going to be doing extra studying, et cetera. You definitely had a very interesting final table, a lot of experience, as you said, with Mackie and Kristen and Ray, et cetera. Talk a little bit about how that changes kind of your kind of, not necessarily preparation, but how you go into this final table. Because if you were up against 5 people who it's their first WPT and already they're having more money cashing than they've ever cashed before. And, you know, there's sometimes scenarios where their cash at this final table of a WPT is more their entire career combined. How does that dynamic affect the way you play going into this final table?
I would say it doesn't. It's just a non-factor. Like, it's like, okay, this player, like, okay, I had a plan for how I expected Chrissy to play. I had a plan for how I expected Cuz to play, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And like, then I would formulate my plan according to how I believe they're approaching it and go from there. So their earnings didn't really have any consideration whatsoever. But if like one of those players had, you know, 50K in earnings and we had 100K locked up, like, well, then like, it's still going to be the same thing. It's still going to be like, how's this player going to proceed? And then how can I exploit that strategy to the best of my ability? And so I think that, like, yes, knowing that they don't have earnings mean the pay jumps might be more important to them. He's probably going to play tight, but it's like, so like figuring out their intended play style, I think would probably be like considering those earnings a little bit. But like at that point, you've like played with everyone so much that you know what they're going to do. For the most part, like some people really want to make the final six and be on TV, and then maybe they'll punt. But so there's some dynamics like that, but not too much.
Yeah. What I'd love to talk about is a very unique scenario that happened with regards to one of the dealers that was playing. Randy Gordon is a dealer at the Wynn, and unfortunately, he's having some issues with regards to a bone marrow cancer. So he arrived at Choctaw and was able to play in the event. But unfortunately, you knocked him out. Talk a little bit about the evil Chance who knocks out the great story, but talk about how you really turned it around, obviously, and made a great story out of it, not just from you, but someone who kind of not only matched it, but even 4x'd it.
I didn't know his story. I knew he won a seat. It was a dealer dealt to me for years. I prefer to tip when I win somewhere, like to the dealers who have dealt to me, or that are.
I 100% agree with you. 100%
yeah,
agree with you. Yeah.
He was one that I hadn't given a $100 bill to.
Yep.
And I don't know, my stack was probably worth 10 or 20K at the time after I busted him. And I was just like, hey, you want a 1% sweat? Like, I thought he would enjoy it. I could tell he's happy to be there, and I thought he might enjoy a sweat, and maybe I'd go deep in it. Story comes out the next day. I learned that he had cancer, had no idea. Then like a couple days before the final table, person reaches out to me and is like, oh, this is awesome. And I was like, oh, I had no idea. They're like, why don't you make it 5 and I'll cover the other 4? And I was like, oh, that's pretty awesome. And I was, so excited to text Randy and let him know. And it's been a pretty fun experience, and couldn't have worked out better for the both of us. Yeah,
I mean, what a great story. And now he's got just over 24,000 that he'll be able to take home. And he had talked about that they're going to be moving to Houston for several months because of his bone marrow transplant. And obviously this will help out a lot in that. What a great kind of feel good story that this just kind of all came together at. And it's a good thing you knocked him out, I guess, huh?
Yeah. I'm a big advocate of like everything works out. Fortunately, it seems like this one is working out a little better for him, and just happy to share some of the luck that I had his way.
Have you talked to him much since, or just kind of just texting back and forth about the final table, or
a reasonable amount? Him and his wife came to the HyperX eSports arena inside the final table, and so yeah, it was awesome that they were there, and I got to talk to him more. And I think we were heads up and chatting, and he was just letting me know, he's sleeping better now that the financial stresses are off. And I can't even imagine the situation that he was in now, learning about what was going on prior to all of that. And I can't imagine sleeping either, how stressful it must have been. And like I said, I'm just really happy that it worked out so well. I had no idea. Like I said, I just thought I was giving a good dealer and a nice guy a $100 or $200 hit tip.
Yeah. I will tell you that I cannot agree with you more with regards to that tip scenario, because a lot of times you have, they talk about it, whatever the percentage, whatever the amount, that's irrelevant, right? Like that's your personal choice, and you do whatever you want with that. But when you do that and you put it just in the pot, well, now every dealer gets 10 cents, whatever. I'm just making it up, but every dealer gets a small amount. And 90% of those dealers, you didn't even see and or weren't affected by them. And so I love it when it comes down to it, that you're able to give those specific people a little bit more directly. I at least I agree with you.
I still do some tipping for everyone.
No, I agree. Right.
Yeah. Right. Just because I might not have seen Randy at the right time to be able to tip him, so I'm sure there's a lot of dealers that I still feel like I owe tips to.
Right.
I still mean to be tipping specifically the dealers that played the WSOP final table, the final 3 or 4 tables on the last few days. I have a list of their names and just have totally forgotten until we had this conversation, you know? And so like, there are stuff like that where you're like, oh yeah, I need to do that. You know, and so like
those dealers, you're all welcome, by the way. Yeah. But yeah, I'm with you 100%, because like, you know, especially a couple of them really like, you know, whatever, boom, you hit the flush on the river and you took down a massive pot and you're like, you know what, I owe it to you. You know what I mean? Like, that's really what it comes down to. And they'll always remember it, and they feel like it's like you went out of your way to do that. They really appreciate that. So I agree with you. I think that's a great way. Again, people, you all can make your own choices, whatever it is, but it's definitely a nice way to help out with the dealers, and especially some of these people they're just friends after a while, right? We get to know them so well on tour, you know, right. Like, oh, it was so great. Like going to a WSOP circuit a couple months ago. I mean, we haven't seen them in 2 years. And so like, it was like a reunion, for the love of Pete. And like, you see them, you're like, oh my God, it's been so long. It was so great to see them all. So always fun. So, well, when we come back, we're going to talk more with Chance about last year. And as we're just kicking off 2022 WSOP, for him to kind of relive the third bracelet that he won, when we return here as we continue the 15th anniversary celebration of the Bernard Lee Poker Show.